shelter where I am undone. How are you so unchangeable when the world is so hostile? And how can we reconcile when my heart is a pendulum? Oh, pendulum, against you alone have I sinned, and in you alone will I live. So cleanse me with hyssop, I'll be made clean. Oh, wash me in your blood, I'll be made white as snow, and you'll get the glory, I'll get the wonder, so the whole world will know you will make us whole. Oh, when you look me in the eyes and terrify my darkness, oh, you soften my hardness with your marvelous light. Oh, and I shake my head when I think of your goodness, and I already knew this, but now I know that I know that I know that against you alone have I sinned, and in you alone will I live. So cleanse me with hyssop, I'll be made clean. Oh, wash me in your blood, I'll be made white as snow, and you'll get the glory, I'll get the wonder, so the whole world will know you will make us whole. Oh, and I see a light in the corner window. Oh, I see a light in the corner, and you say there's more. Where that came from. So cleanse me with hyssop, I'll be made clean. Oh, wash me in your blood, I'll be made white as snow, and you'll get the glory, I'll get the wonder, so the whole world will know you will make us. Cleanse us with hyssop, we'll be made clean. Oh, wash us in your blood, and we'll be made white as snow, and you'll get the glory, we'll get the wonder, so the whole world will know you will make us whole. Will make us whole. Thank you. I might move this. That was a song called Hyssop. My name's Elise. I'm really excited to be here. This is so beautiful. Wow. It's really nice. It's really nice to be here and to be with people playing songs. What a delight. This next tune, so that song is one I wrote a while back, and it's based on, one second, Psalm 51, I believe. And yeah, had that line about hyssop, and I Googled it, and it's this really beautiful flowering plant that was known to be a purifying plant, which is a delightful idea. And I just thought that was a very powerful prayer to say, cleanse me as if with hyssop. And so it was used in the Old Testament as like this purification symbol. And that's the song that came out of that. And this is another song, believe it or not. One second. Nope, that's not it. Can you tell it's been a while since I played in front of people? There we week. Okay, this is called No Fear, and it goes like this. Undivided heart, unshakable faith, no distractions, pride or fear, no waterfall from grace. Jesus, Jesus, hold me now, I don't know where to turn. Though the world that sweeps me off my feet, your face is what I yearn for. Oh my child, be still, for I am near. Your prayers I heard, so rest assured, in love there is no fear. The mountains that surrounded me, you've casted them to sea. You've planted me a garden with one lone mustard seed. You're the God who made the galaxies, the human heart's intricacy, who saw through my iniquity to find me on my knees. Oh my child, be still, for I am near. Your prayers are heard, so rest assured, in love there is no fear. 'Cause we're not of this world but in it, infinite among the finite, indefinitely definite, serving a God who knows no limit. My life, he's sovereign in it. My flesh is irrelevant when the kingdom of God is coming down as it is in heaven. I'm praying without ceasing for the blessing he's releasing, for a spirit void of treason in a heart I feel a peace in. But let the truth be told, I'm not the one in control. Greater is he living in me than the frailty of my soul. For I am his child, a daughter he holds dear. When all was lost, he bore my cross. It's grace that's brought me here. Oh, unashamed and unafraid. Oh, in his love there is no fear. We made it. Thank you. Thank you. This one's a cover. And I could tell you what it is, or see if you can guess very quickly. Let me try this. Anyone? That was the whole song. Just kidding. Okay. If God had a name, what would it be, and would you call it to his face? If you were faced with him in all of his glory, what would you ask if you had just one question? 'Cause yeah, God is great, and yeah, oh, God is good, and yeah. What if God was one of us, just a slob like one of us, just a stranger on the bus, trying to make his way home? And if God had a name, if God had a face, what would it look like, and would you want to see? If seeing meant that you would have to believe in things like heaven and in Jesus and the saints and all of the prophets, and yeah, God is great, and yeah, God is good, and yeah. What if God was one of us, just a slob like one of us, just a stranger on the bus, trying to make his way home? forgot one. Oh yeah. Nobody calling on the phone except for the Pope, baby, in Rome. Just trying to make his way home, his way home, his way home. Just trying to make his way home. Thank you. That's it from me for now.
All right, let's hear it for Elise one more time. Fantastic. Man, that was like bringing me back. Is that Joan Osborne? Yes. Yes, I think that might be the only Joan Osborne song I know. But that was great. Thank you. We're really excited to have Elise Arsensult here with us tonight and just sharing her art, her music with us. And so I want to encourage you to follow her on social media. You can find her on all the social media platforms, Elise Arsensult. You can find her name spelling on our Instagram page, so you can go ahead and follow her. We're also really privileged tonight to have a little bit of a change, actually. So how many of you came specifically to hear John Behrens tonight? All right, yes, okay, we're safe, yeah. John Behrens was supposed to be with us tonight. John is a friend of mine and would have done a tremendous job, and we really regret that he can't be here, but his whole family is sick, and really sick, and so we're not sure what's going on there. We hope it's just the flu or something and not going to be too serious, but it wasn't really safe for him to come, and also when you have little kids, it's kind of hard to leave people at home when everyone is sick and doing that kind of stuff. So we made a bit of a change, and so we're really fortunate to have Cyril Guerette here with us tonight. Cyril is one of the team that helps to bring Summer 6 together. He's the pastor at Groundswell Church, which is a newer church plant in Burlington area. And he also teaches at Tyndale. He is the assistant pastor of philosophy and... Theology and philosophy. Professor. Yeah. Assistant, what did I say? Pastor. Oh, wow. I was getting that mixed up. Sorry. The assistant professor of theology and philosophy. And so we're really fortunate to have him here. Just before I turn over to Cyril, I'll let you know there is some water in the cooler. And so if you feel like you need a bottle of water, you can go back and grab some. There's hand sanitizer around. I didn't bring the bug spray tonight. So if you have money and you want to pay, Lizzie can give you some bug spray if you're dying as the night goes on. There is an outhouse around the back of the barn, so if you need to use that, you're more than welcome to do that. I didn't introduce myself. Sorry, my name's Chris. I'm one of the pastors at Compass Point, which is the church with the big green roof on the 403 there, if you drive past. And we're really excited to do Summer 6 as a chance for young adults to connect, to have conversations maybe that are harder to have in our churches on Sunday mornings. And so part of what we're going to do is have a bit of a Q&A time. And so I hope that you'll be thinking about your questions. That's really meant to be a focus of Summer 6 is conversation. And so Cyril's going to share, but really the whole idea is to get you warmed up so that you can ask questions. And so we want you to be thinking about those questions as he talks and feel like you're in kind of a safe space to ask questions and challenge this guy. Yeah. He doesn't know everything. I know him. We talk. So challenge, ask some questions and push on those limits a little bit. We're happy to do that. Tonight we're talking about science and faith and how those things correlate. And so that's been a debate within the church for centuries, but I think it's become particularly acute even in this COVID season, right? With the idea of viruses and vaccines and, maybe you've experienced conflict or feel conflict about those things in your own life or your family or your household or your churches or whatever. So I'm super excited for Cyril to share, and I'm going to turn it over to you. Okay? All right? Great.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, it's good to be home. Summer 6 is definitely something that's close to my heart, and I'm very thankful that we can actually meet in person. So it's good to see everyone. This morning we got the email, and then Chris sent it out, and then Dagmar from the meeting house and John Latta from the meeting house. We were all texting each other, what are we going to do? And thankfully, today was the day that someone didn't show up, because it's something I actually teach in my philosophy classes a lot. And we were talking about the relationship between science and faith. And I thought actually the song that we just heard was a perfect introduction. If you hear those words from Joan Osborne, where she says, God had a face. Would you want to see it if it meant that you had to believe in God and Jesus and all the angels? And I thought that was a really poignant song selection for a topic today, because that's the big question, right? One of the reasons why science and faith are often said to conflict is because science is about observation of nature. So scientists want facts. They want to see things that they've observed in reality, and they want to measure them, and they want to be able to repeat any experiments that have been done to make sure that what you're saying is true. And so there's a few places where faith and science have come face to face and had a little bit of a conflict. And one of those places is definitely in the history of the church. There's something kind of, I call it a turning point, okay? Because science and faith got along really well for a while. There's a few people. Tertullian in the church, he had a famous saying, which was, what does Jerusalem have to do with Athens? And what he was trying to say there was, Athens is all about the philosophy and the reasoning, and Jerusalem is about faith and belief. And he was saying, what do they have to do with each other? And so he was trying to, in many ways, try to take the Greek philosophers and reason, the scientists from Athens, and compare them to the holy prophets and say they don't get along together. What's funny about that, if someone could turn down the mic real quick, that'd be awesome. Thanks, John. What's funny about that is Tertullian himself was schooled in philosophy. He was a lawyer. So before he became a Christian, he was really well versed in all the things of Athens. And then he's using his rhetoric, he's using his philosophy to now attack it. And it's very interesting because you kind of think, you would not be able to say these things or know how to use these type of arguments if you didn't learn philosophy in the first place. So most Christians, for most of history, thought using reason was actually a God-given gift. And in fact, I'll give you an example of this. The medieval church, if you were going to enter into the monastery to become a monk, the very first textbook that you would learn was a book called The Marriage of Mercury and Philology. And what this was basically about was it was written by a pagan in the 300s, and it was basically an encyclopedia of all kind of knowledge, putting it together. And the monks would have to learn to read that. It was the 7 liberal arts. So you had the language arts, you had rhetoric and philosophy, grammar, and then dialectic, which is philosophical argumentation. And then in the second half, you had to learn mathematics, so arithmetic, geometry. And then, what was the other one? And the last one was music or harmony. And these were all the mathematics sciences. So in order to become a monk, you had to actually read a secular textbook. And guess what was in that textbook? There was a whole discussion of how, first of all, the earth was round. So the early monks, for 1,000 years, knew that the earth was round. They read the philosophical arguments for that. The second thing they learned was that the earth went around the sun. In fact, Copernicus, when he cites his first studies, he cites this ancient book that the monks used as their basic textbook. So what I'm trying to say is Christians for a long time believed in these things. What was really interesting was when the universities started, they started throwing away all the old monk books. So these are old. We don't need these anymore. We have this new reasoning, and they discovered new Aristotle, and all this happened. And so they got rid of that textbook. And a couple hundred years later, there is a pope who actually condemns someone for saying the earth goes around the sun, even though 200 years earlier, most of the monks would have known that was at least a theory. So this is really interesting, and you think about the history of the relationship between science and religion. That's the very first place where the real break happens, right? When you have a pope say to a scientist, you are excommunicated. Like basically, you're going to hell, right? This was a dramatic moment in the history of the church and science, because all of a sudden scientists start thinking, well, the church is obviously wrong. If the church is wrong on this, right? And then you start having science versus faith, and it kind of explodes in the Enlightenment. Now, even though that happens, you have to remember that most of the major scientists were still Christian. Someone like Sir Isaac Newton, for example, who revolutionized all of our understanding of mechanics and physics and optics, he actually had about 10... He had a good scientific history career, but at the end of it, he spent like his last 20 years just writing theology, like really obsessed with, like a lot of it was numerology. It was kind of weird, but he literally spent his whole time talking about God. So to say science and religion are opposite is actually historically we can see a kind of a split happening in the Enlightenment period, but it takes a long time to kind of pull apart. I'll give you another example. Who created the Big Bang Theory? A priest, Catholic priest. Yeah. So this is a Catholic priest who creates this idea of the Big Bang. Now, to the point that when they finally started showing physical proof of it, they didn't want to use the term Big Bang. They tried. A lot of the scientists were like, oh, don't use that term because it traces back to this Christian scientist. How about the history of genetics? Where does it start? Remember the bean experiment? Do you remember that in high school? Mendel, he's a monk. So you have a history of Christians really active in science, but we start to see this thing pull apart because you start to see, really it was a battle of control, right? There was a power vacuum that was happening in Europe, and the church had a lot of power, and when people started pushing back, the Reformation, and pushing back in things like with Galileo, with his basically Galileo's borrowing from Copernicus, who borrowed from, well, basically Copernicus added a lot of data to what was happening in the marriage of Mercury and philology. So the ancients knew all this stuff beforehand, and the early Christians loved taking in the ancient philosophy, and they were eating it up. And so we had this dramatic turn in the Enlightenment, and then atheism starts to rise, largely as a reaction against the church for many different purposes. But some of it was because the church was basically telling people, don't think for yourselves, we tell you how to think. And if you know any scientifically minded people, it doesn't fly very well. In fact, I don't think it should fly very well because that's not how God made us. God made us to use our minds and use our reason. And then the next big place, where would you say another place, if you're thinking about a big break between religion and science, what's another big place that happened in history? More recently, I'd say. What's another big topic that Christians and scientists have had a history of fighting over in the last 100 years? Expansion of the universe is one. But how about the development of life? Evolution. Right? This is probably the other very big place where Christians and scientists have butted heads. And again, we were talking about this a little earlier. When Darwin created his theory, he actually was still called himself a Christian. In fact, if you read The Origin of Species, he uses the word creator and creation a lot. He uses the word evolution like 4 times. Later on in life, he became a little more bitter because he had some battles with the church, also his death of his daughter, so he became a little more probably atheistic. But when he first started the theory, he was trying to convince a Christian world of this, right? He didn't think it was automatically antithetical. There was a big problem, however, obviously, because when you start talking about the natural development, the evolution, you start getting yourself in a question and answer type of session with the book of Genesis. And so that became a huge question point, right? How do you interact with that? So a lot of times today, people think if you're a Christian, you don't believe in evolution, no matter what. Now, there's a lot of Christians who don't, and they have good reasons not to, and they'll argue against it. But you also have a pope who's, some people say he's not a Christian. I consider anyone who believes in Jesus Christ to be a Christian. You can argue whether they're right or wrong about things, but the pope believes in evolution. Largest denomination in Christianity holds officially to a theory of evolution. Now, this theory of evolution is not exactly what you have in the scientific community, because they believe that Jesus or God came somehow into this and actually activated these things, and it wasn't just like a monkey turned into a human. Like God is actively involved, and there's a lot of questions. Someone like Hugh Ross would argue, if you look at the scriptures, it's the only ancient document that actually traces the evolution of each animal species. Because if you look at how God makes them, He makes them in the order in which the theory of evolution says they develop. So he actually uses that as an argument. Or, for example, the snake. For a long time, people were like, oh, the Bible's wrong because the snake actually evolved in legs. Well, now they believe that it lost its legs. So there's a lot of questions. And I'm not here to talk too much about these things. What I want to talk about is, if you're a Christian, do you automatically have to throw out what scientists are saying? And if you're a scientist, do you have to automatically throw out what the Bible's saying? And I think you probably know what the answer is. And the answer is probably no. But let's talk a little about, how do you reconcile faith and reason, or faith and science? Because for faith, for Christians, the Bible is authority of truth. For scientists, the five senses is the authority of truth. And then you have this other thing called reason, which is the authority of truth. And by the way, philosophy and science have been debating for a long time whether or not the best source of truth is pure reason or it's empirical observation of the five senses. Plato was really into pure reason. Aristotle was into the senses, but he also had his place for reason. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So the church basically had this conflict that evolved, and we, in many ways, I think, lost ground when we didn't engage the questions in a fair manner, and we kind of just went, you're evil, and attacked, right? I know why the church in many ways did that, because the Bible is very important to us, but there was a lot of ground loss when basically people at the church would say, don't listen to science, listen to the Bible. And they basically helped bifurcate the two, separate the two. And I think that's one of the big problems. So here's three ways that faith and science interact, okay? The first one is that they conflict. This is probably the modern idea. Whenever you talk about faith and you talk about science, the average person thinks, they butt heads. Like they are in conflict with each other. And this isn't, by the way, just from scientists. Christians will say this too. Right? You have a lot of churches that I'll almost call anti-intellectual. I mean, I think it's been changing, but that would actually say, don't even listen to them. Don't read that. Don't talk about that. Like, just read your Bible and stay away from that demonic science stuff, right? It's kind of like, I might not say it that way, but it was like literally like, don't go to university. Don't engage in this stuff because you're going to be deceived. And I'm going to be honest. Yeah, I think many people are deceived when they go to university. There's a lot of lies that come through this. But the answer to that isn't hide yourself from it, because then it makes people think, your God isn't big enough for the truth. You can't have a conversation about these questions or these facts. And the church kind of literally hid its head from it and pretended it wasn't there. And the world has moved further and further in a direction, and the church is now trying to catch up having these discussions. I think that's one of the reasons why we've seen the church lose a lot of its effect in culture. It's a lot because the conversations weren't allowed to be had, especially when it comes to evolution. And we can talk a little bit about that later, how that works. I wouldn't consider myself a full-blown evolutionist, but I would also think that God could use those things. And I think you can be a Christian and hold to different views. Okay, that's what I'll kind of throw that out there. I think we have issues with the fossil records. We do have a lot of gaps that we have to honestly address, which I think scientists don't. They just kind of go, oh no, we got it figured out. It's like, no, there's a lot of things there we should be questioning and talking about. But on the other hand, Christians have to also be able to say, okay, yeah, we see what you're talking about. Obviously, at least on a micro scale, you see some form of evolution. And then you also see there's a big question about how old the earth is. Right? So this conflict happens. So the first thing is that there's a conflict. And sometimes this happens in the idea of like, God, I actually know someone whose brother said to him, God buried fake dinosaurs in the earth to see who would really believe him. But that's literally, he thinks that the dinosaurs were traps set by God to test you. I don't know about you, that seems like probably not the most simple answer. If you think about Occam's razor, Occam, by the way, was a monk. His idea is the simplest answer is best explanation. That's a pretty complicated explanation. That God would literally deceive you, or set up traps for you to possibly deceive, to test you. Okay, well, that I don't know about you, but that seems to me probably not in the realm of possibilities. Now, there's a lot of questions about dinosaurs, right? Did dinosaurs and humans interact at the same time? What were dragons and human lore? And there's some good questions there, but we have to be able to actually have those conversations, not just gotta go, oh, that's, again, I think that's hiding your head and not actually engaging with the questions. So Christians will sometimes say, don't even, basically you need to just trust this and don't listen to science. Science is bad. Well, if you know what science is literally just using your senses, trying to observe the world and trying to make sense of it. Science is not pro-God or anti-God in and of itself. It's just it's literally a tool. I would say science is based in observation, which is something I believe God gave us to use to observe the world and understand it. And actually, I think Christianity makes more sense of why I would trust that than an atheistic worldview, which gives no reason for believing. Why would my five senses align with reality? It's accidentally happened. The world just exploded and all of a sudden existed, and all of a sudden these creatures evolved, and their mind actually gives them reliable data from the universe. Well, that seems like a lot. You have to trust that your mind accidentally evolved in line with the universe and it's not deceiving you. That's not actually a reason to believe it. Whereas I say, a God made me with a mind to observe the world. That gives me a reason why I can actually have faith in my observation and my senses. So I don't have to keep going on this conflict. There's a lot of conflict. I think we all could say we've seen the conflict between faith and religion. The opposite view I've seen a lot of times, especially from like Christian apologists, is faith is reason. Like it's the same thing. Right? It's like basically, if you reason, you believe in God. Of course, like it's like you prove Him scientifically that God exists. And I think myself, that becomes problematic because faith is being able to believe in things that you don't see, right? That's literally what the Bible says faith is. If science is seeing things, they can't be exactly the same thing. So how does using your reason, using science help with connecting to God? I don't think they're the exact same thing. So someone who says you just, if you have reason, you can prove what we'll call, I don't want to get too far into it, but with a deductive proof, a proof from reason that is like 100% airtight, certain that God exists. Maybe the ontological argument is one that would work that way. The rest of them are more observational things that you have to, I think are useful, and I believe in the 5 ways and the proofs and those type of things. But are they the exact same things? Is reason the same thing as faith? I would say they're probably not the exact same thing. Now, other people, I would say, have the opposite problem, and I think our modern culture has a problem, which is basically faith and science are the same thing to them because basically science is their religion. Right? They just trust science. Science is truth. One of the issues with that is we know science or observation can sometimes be faulty. Right? If you look at a stick in the water, oh, look at that crooked stick. Pull it out, oh, it's straight. With my kids, I'm on the highway, going down the highway. Look at the pool of water on the highway there. You get to it, there's no pool of water. Where is that? Right? Oh, my eyes aren't always exactly right. So somehow observation, my 5 senses, I have to be, now I'm older, I'm like, oh, well, that's not real. I know I can reason and understand that what my eyes are seeing is not really there. Right? So being able to prove something just through observing it doesn't always necessarily work. And we've seen this even in modern times. Why does science keep changing? We have these paradigm shifts. Right? Like the first one was Newton, and then Einstein comes along. It's like, it's actually science changes. How it sees the entire everything literally changes. The difference between Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein is radical. So science actually has a subjective component to it. It's not as objective as we think. And we have to recognize that. I mean, this is postmodernism's critique of science, literally. And basically, postmodernism come along and said, like, you can't know anything almost, right? Not literally. We can talk about postmodern philosophy and how it works. But it's, one of the things they're saying is it's all narratives. We're all giving narratives. And that's somewhat true in a certain sense. We're all giving stories about how we see things. And even science is a story. Until we get a better story, this is how we think this works. It's called paradigms. And we have paradigm shifts. It's a literal thing that happens in science. So saying science is fact, science is taking facts and that's factual, observing things, but then we create theories around the facts, and those are not the same thing as facts. But we often confuse the theories we build around the facts with the facts. So, for example, the theory of evolution. Well, someone says, that's not a theory. Well, the theory that humans evolved from apes naturally is not something you can observe. Right? You can't observe it. So that's not science in the purest form of science. In fact, one of the best critiques of pure scientism is by David Hume. And David Hume, by the way, is no friend of Christians. He actually has a whole book about miracles. And one of the big places where faith and science butt heads is miracles, right? Because science says miracles. Many scientists say miracles can't happen. Well, if you observe a miracle, what were you supposed to do? But that's science. If I saw Jesus like walk on water, well, I saw him walk on water. Now I have to rethink my whole science, right? I get why you'd question someone say they saw someone walk on water, but if you saw it, that's science. You saw the science of the miracle, right? So, but David Hume's had a big critique of miracles. David Hume's also had a big critique of our ability to reason and use science. But he critiqued the idea of being able to predict things. For example, he said if you pick, we'll say a pen, I pick a pen and I let go of it and it drops on the ground. I can do that. I pick it up again. I let go of it. It drops on the ground. Eventually, I would say letting go of the pen caused it to fall to the ground. He'd say, no, you can't. That's not science. As soon as you say there's a causation, that's literally a theory. You've given a theory. All you can say is 1,000,000 times Cyril held the pen, let go of it, it fell to the earth. That's pure science. When you start to say this caused something, that's a theory. Now, he admits that he needs that theory to walk 1 foot in front of him, so he needs to believe in cause and effect to a certain sense, but he says that's not the same thing as science. And so this is, I think, really important because we start to recognize science, and this is why at the end I want to put, science takes some faith. You have to trust that the world works in a certain way. You have to trust that your mind will actually give you reality. You have to trust, here's one, you have to trust that you exist. I have to trust that other minds exist. People are existing right now who would say, you don't exist, and they deny the reality of the world. And Aristotle said you can't do anything with those people. You can't prove it to them. I mean, you can slap them, I guess, but they just say that was not, like, I made you up, and you're in my mind, you're a dream. Like, literally, this is an issue. You have to believe that your senses and your mind actually is in conjunction with reality. You have to believe that what I'm speaking to you is actually going to be understood, right? Even how language works. There's a lot of faith that's involved in science. I also say there's a lot of science that's involved in faith. For example, if I say God became man, became one of us, right? Maybe he didn't ride the bus, but he walked with a cross. That means I have to understand all that what that means. I have to, and literally, in order to believe theology, you have to do a lot of hard reasoning. Like the Trinity, for example, is a really complicated philosophical proposition. I have to understand, like, when you say God became human, I have to use my reason to understand that. Right? So to have faith in Jesus becoming human and dying for my sins, I have to use reason to understand it and then say I believe in it. So for me to have faith, I have to have reason. And I would say in order to have reason, you also have to have faith. You have to have faith and reason. So instead of it conflicting or being the same thing, I like to say that they're complementary. They're two sides of the same coin, right? You don't get a heads without a tails. They need each other. They kind of coexist. And that's how I think as Christians we need to approach things. I'll give you a really cool example, I think, of where we're starting to see some reconvergence. One of the difficulties I mentioned before is how science is now becoming a religion. One of the places we're seeing this, I think, become problematic is something called transhumanism. Have you guys heard this before? Transhumanism is about transcending humanity, which means that the next step of evolution is us evolving ourselves through technology. So I'm going to put a microchip in my brain. When I first heard about the microchip in the brain thing, I thought it was insane. No one ever wanted to do it because they're talking about doing it for video games. And then I read all the comment sections like, oh, I can't wait to sign up and I can play Xbox with my brain. Whoa, like this is literally, now people are I'll call it reifying. They're now making science almost a religion. You will be able to evolve yourself. We need to transcend our humanity and make the next humanity 2.0, like the androids and literally, this is what people are believing in now, right? That they're actually believing science will allow us to transcend our humanity and kind of reach nirvana or heaven or whatever you want to call it. That it's going to become through science. How many people do you think, like, literally, science is like a god to them? I'd say it's actually quite a number of people. This is the next step that we're going to see. People have always tried to believe in something, right? So now it's like science. Well, when you hear that science, trust science, or whatever, what is science? Science is not a thing. Science is a process that humans, right? So that you're saying trust the scientists? Well, yeah, but the scientists keep changing their mind, right? And now I'm not saying I'm not anti-science. I hope you see that. I think science is the way that God gave us to think through the world. So I think science is actually a really great thing. But it's not God. It's a gift from God. You know what I'm saying? So we have to make sure that we're able to kind of think these things through, because we're going to start seeing more and more, I call reification, making science God. On the other hand, you're also seeing the church in many ways continuing down the reactionary process of like anything science, pushing it down and not wanting to talk about it. So, for example, there's people being fired for saying that they think the earth is old from positions. So, I mean, there's a lot of theologians for a long time who have thought the earth was old, right? Like, even when it says the earth was formless and void, it talks about there seems to be a gap between God creating the heavens and the earth and then all of a sudden him forming the earth. There could be how many years between? We don't know. So there's many Christian scientists who would say the earth is really, really old. Now, can we say you can't be a Christian? No. I would say that that's not responsible. That they're trying to integrate their faith with their scientific understanding. Another place where we're starting to see, I think, really interesting, and maybe it's because I love science fiction. Maybe all of you guys, I love science fiction, and that's why the transhumanism stuff is kind of really. I keep my eye on it. I think it's dangerous. I don't want to integrate my body with technology. Although I admit it, if my arm got cut off, I'd have a bionic arm probably of some sort, right? But I don't know about the integration in my mind. But right now, I'll give you an example where I'm trying to push my scientific kind of atheist friends when they're like, well, science obviously shows that evolution is true, and therefore there must be intelligent life in the universe somewhere else, right? Some scientists are like, no, that's conspiracy theories. Other ones are like, no, aliens must exist because evolution is a process, so there must be other intelligent life in the universe. And I say to them, welcome back to the club. Like, we've been saying that for a couple hundred years, and you've been making fun of us when we talk about angels, right? Like, what are angels except for extraterrestrial beings? Or like, they're literally other intelligent life in the universe. Yes, I believe in other intelligent life in the universe. Do I believe in little green men flying spaceships? Show me one, and then we can talk about it. I still am there with my science, right? But could it be possible? I don't know. Maybe there's like, I know a lot of people use, like, a lot of the alien conspiracy theorists like to use like Ezekiel as like UFOs flying around, and if you ever see the right, I don't necessarily think that's a UFO, but I am happy when I can engage people and going like, oh, so you believe that there must be other like life in the universe? What about the multiverse? People are talking about the multiverse a lot now. Well, is that in the Bible, like an unseen realm? Didn't Elijah open the eyes of Elisha, and all of a sudden, or his servant, and he saw all the angel armies around him? Like, isn't that kind of like another dimension? There's life right here. Like, I feel like that's something again where our faith can kind of say, these are things that we've held to, and we can start to engage with people who are now just starting to kind of push these narratives, I guess. Right? So I ended up with a weird topic at the end on purpose because I wanted to kind of push on this whole where science goes, right? But I do know that I've been talking for too long, and it's time to maybe ask some questions or talk about some things. So. No, it's not. Okay.
No, that's okay. Okay, thanks, Cyril. This is great. Yeah, stand over here so everyone can see you. And so we're going to ask some questions. So I can't bring the mic to you. So if you'll speak. Oh, that mic. Okay, great. Here. Thanks, John. I don't want to... How loud is this? Okay. Okay, so we're going to ask some questions. So I want to bring the mic to you so that we can hear your question. This is great, Cyril. Thank you very much. My next sermon is going to be Elisha and the multiverse. I'm very excited about that.
It's going to be a great time at Compass Point. So talking about aliens. So like the Pentagon pretty recently released, video from like, I think it was off the coast of Carolina.
Yeah,
something like that.
The Navy, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Some poor Navy guy just like opened up an entirely new like age of humanity where we are like, oh my goodness, UFOs are actually real. I don't know if that's a controversial thing to say that UFOs are real, but like we have video proof from the Navy. It probably is real. But so if there is intelligent life on other planets, I know I've watched some and read some stuff about like how would that affect Christianity, because like God doesn't specifically reference any other like planet and stuff. And some of my like talking to some of my friends, they're like, well, if there is intelligent life on other Earth, then I hope they have their own version of Jesus or something, which is like a really nice sentiment. But like, do you think that the existence of intelligent life forms on other Earth would shatter our understanding of Christianity? Like, do you think? I think probably a lot of people might.
Right.
Leave.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. First of all, yes, we have some video evidence of UFOs, and we have a lot of Navy personnel attesting to the fact. I mean, we have lots of people talking about this for a long time. We don't know that they're aliens, though. They could literally be U.S. technology, Russian technology, Chinese technology. Literally, this could have been going on for a long time, right? So we don't know for sure where. All we know is we've seen weird things in the sky. We have videos of that. So, like, people talked about the Germans having advanced technology before. Like, literally, the internet existed
like the
before.
Tesseract, you mean?
The Tesseract, yeah, Tesseract, yeah. We've had the internet, like, basically, we're always decades behind the military technology, right? Like, they let us get scraps after they've had things ahead of time. The internet was invented by the military long before we ended up using it and stuff. So it could be, my first point is that we don't know for sure it's alien life, okay? After that, I would say, if it is alien life, then we have to rethink how we look at the scriptures. For example, some people would argue that the snake at the beginning in the garden scene is what we call a seraph, which is a kind of a snake-like angel creature in the Bible. So literally, it was Satan, and he's an angelic being of some sort. Where did he come from? Another dimension, another planet. Who knows, right? But we have intelligent life again. So and we have different species. Like when you look at the angels in the Bible, there's different types. So then I would just go, oh, I guess this is more literal than I thought. Right now, I'm not there yet. I'm not saying there are little green men. I tend to believe angels are all around us and they can phase in and out of our reality. But by the way, angels can do weird things in the Bible. Like literally, it tells you might be eating a meal with an angel and not know it. Entertaining angels unaware, it says in Hebrews, right? So we know these, what do I want to call them? Like non-human intelligences can manifest themselves in weird ways. They can go into pigs, and they can also manifest themselves as a human being. So the Bible has some weird stuff going on. So what I would argue would be that just fits into my narrative. I have to rethink how I read the Bible, but it doesn't mean I don't believe in the Bible. It does change in many ways. I hear what you're saying about redemption. So what I would say is Jesus Christ, no matter what, is unique in the universe. The way I read the New Testament is at the end of all this, God sets his throne up on earth. The new heavens and new earth, like earth is the new throne. Wherever God's throne is now, he literally lands a big cube. Borg, anyone? Like, no, sorry. He literally lands a big cube, or some people say it's a pyramid, whatever. But it's a giant thing that comes out of the sky and lands on the earth, right? Isn't that what happens at the end of Revelation? Read Revelation 2 again. It comes out of the sky and it lands on the earth, and it's the new heaven. So how does that work? Jesus went to prepare us a place. What's that mean? Well, maybe it's more literal than we thought. Maybe he's actually lit our place, and I'm not saying it is for sure, but that's how I would react to that. I'd be like, okay, I got to rethink how I'm not there yet, but I would just have to, it would make me, this is one thing I want to point out with science and faith. I believe all truth is God's truth. So if we end up seeing something with our eyes that's true, then it's got to fit in the truth of God somehow. And I'll rethink how I interpret the scriptures. I still think the scriptures are God's revealed truth. And the one thing I would say is Jesus is very unique. I don't think there's other Jesuses. I think the only incarnation is human. And I think that really messes the angels up. Like, I think that's one of the things maybe that made Satan so mad at us. Like, he hates us so much because God became one of us. Right? That's the Christian story. And he's going to set up his base on this planet. So if there are other planets, it's like this is going to be literally where the reconciliation work. And if you read some other passages, some really interesting passages in Ephesians where it talks about the whole cosmos is going to be reconciled through Christ. Right? So we still have, that would be my answer. If there are actual aliens, that's how I'd go with it. I'm not there yet in terms of like, does that make sense though? Like, that's what I'm saying, like all truth is God's truth. So if I found out little green men and spaceships was true, then I have to rethink how I understand the truth, but it doesn't change that God is true and that Jesus is real and that he became human. Okay. By the way, that's an important point I want to point out. Jesus is human forever. Do we know that? Like, he's still in a human body. Christians don't, they think like when you die, you go to some place, and that's not the final reality. The final reality is you get your body back. Very scientific religion, Christianity. You actually are re-enfleshed. You're not reincarnated because that comes with different ideas. You're still you with your same memories, and you're not a million different people throughout history, but you're literally coming back in the flesh. You're going to have flesh. It'll be weird flesh. It'll be kind of advanced like Jesus, but Jesus ate fish after too, right? So we have to remember that Jesus is still in a human body right now, and he will be for eternity. That's what he gave up for you. When it says he let go of being equal with God, it's like he literally became a human forever. That's not unorthodox. That's actually the orthodox Christian position. But Christians, I always say that to people, and they're like, what? That's what we believe.
Okay, so, yeah, let's keep going because I want to get some more questions in. So either people are like completely glazed over, or they're like going to be awake all night long, wondering what kind of things they've been missing in terms of their thinking. So, another question from somebody? Someone be brave. Cyril, is this a generational issue? This debate between science and spirituality, or science and faith? Like, like let's be honest, our parents, our grandparents, like, they're the ones often getting the answers in Genesis magazine. They're the ones that are often, if there's any threat to the theory of creationism or something like that. And those are sometimes hard conversations between us and grandma. And it's like, so is this a generational issue, or is it broader than that?
There's definitely a factor there, I think. I do think it does. We have to ask the hard questions of the Bible with stuff like evolution. Like, for example, death. Did death enter after the fall, or was it like evolution says it existed way before the fall? So then you have to take death as a spiritual death, not a physical death. Or what about the curse of the fall? I thought that was why we have thorns and things. So there's a lot of questions we're going to have to come to. So I think how you deal with the Bible starts to change. Generationally, it probably is a big factor. But again, I also want to ask questions of the evolutionists. Like, I like to leave things open. Like, we do not have good evidence of interspecies. If they try to point out Archaeopteryx, I don't think that's the best example. I haven't seen or Lucy, or there's a lot of questions. We should have way more like in between species in the fossil record than we do, and so that's why you have like literal scientists today arguing for what we call panspermia, which is the idea that like life came from other planets, right? That's why we're going to look at like Mars, and we're looking at asteroids. We're looking for life because literally a lot of scientists think maybe it came from other planets and started here, and because we're trying to figure out how we're missing a lot of things in the fossil record. Some people think, you have a lot of people on the History Channel saying that aliens oversaw the evolution, or like there's a lot of. So I guess my answer is yes. I think there's a generational point. I think we have to struggle with the question. I don't want to just say whatever I hear a scientist say is fact. I think it's a theory dealing with facts. But I also don't want to just say like it has to be 6-day creation, right? That's another thing I want to point out. When people say that basically Christians are changing the Bible by saying that Genesis 6 days isn't literal, there's a commentary by Augustine in the 300s called the Literal Commentary on Genesis, which literally says the 6 days aren't literal. Okay, so this isn't new. It's not like people are like, oh, now we have to change it. Like Christians for a long time have been saying, I don't think those six days are literal. That's more of a poetic device to help explain God made everything. That's not a new theory. We're talking about Augustine, the greatest theologian in the West, right? But we grew up, and you're right, I grew up in a church, and I grew up in a Christianity that was really like, if you said it wasn't literal 6 days, you were evil and you love Satan. And I think that's where we have to kind of push back. Is like, now, do I believe that some people who hold the 6 days, do I hold them as rational, strong believing, scientific belief? Yeah, I think I know really awesome and smart 6-day creationists. So I'm not. I think the church needs to stop dividing on that issue as much and making that like a faith issue and more of a, this is how I'm looking at this issue. Kind of like we do other areas of theology, right?
Sure. So. Yeah, someone else have a question. Come on, don't be shy. It doesn't have to be about aliens or evolution. Yeah? All right.
Yeah, I just did the aliens thing for fun, but maybe
no, it's great.
Freak people out.
It was great. Yeah, we're all freaked out and we don't know what to say. Okay.
It's Alex's fault. I'm just joking.
All right. Yeah, I've been reading about these kinds of things about the creation and like what amount of time it would have taken. So I'm wondering, how should we interpret the debate about like whether there was the flood of Noah that
Right.
that people have differences of opinion about what the fossil records show of or of like things about the layers of the rock.
Yes,
and,
right. That's a great question about the layers because there's kind of two different theories about how things form, right? And one is like slowly, gradually over time, gradualism. And the idea is like it took millions of years for this layer of rock and then the next one. And other one's catastrophism, which is the idea that a giant calamity can hit and it can look like it can stratify a flood, it can stratify rock, and it can look like some people say this took millions of years to form. It really literally took like a year, right, to form from a flood. So I think those things are questions that we should be able to engage in. I think probably both things happen. I personally believe in a literal flood. Now, when it says the whole world, I don't think that means it has to be over the entire globe. It could have just been that known world, like that word world. We have to realize when we use the word world, we mean the globe. Where they meant the world, they meant like that whole area. But it seems to me when you look at history, Chinese history, other history, there seemed to be some type of catastrophic flood that hit a big part of the earth. And so I actually believe that. Now, a lot of people debate that. And I think it probably did affect some of the geology of the earth as well in some ways. So when you talk about days and times, you can probably notice I'm a bit of an agnostic. I don't want to come down on like it was 6 days or it wasn't. As a rational kind of person, I don't know enough about it, to be honest. And I don't think, when I read the science of it, a lot of the science reads in a lot of, it has to take specific things and say this always happened this way, right? And then it extrapolates it over millions of years. I don't know for sure if that works or not, and it could have been, but I'm a little bit skeptical of both sides on that. But I would say to say you have to take 6 days, I think is too much. I think that the church has always recognized that certain genres, and that first chapter of Genesis is very poetic. Like how it's set up is very poetic. Even how like there's plants before there's a sun and a moon. Like there's right, yeah. There's a lot of weird things where you like if you took that as literal, it kind of for me, I have real hard time saying it has to be 6 days literal.
Okay, let's talk about we got Bill Nye. Right?
Science guy, yeah.
And Ken Ham. I don't know how many of you guys know Bill Nye and Ken Ham. So Relevant Magazine, they a year or two ago posted a video where Bill Nye, you guys know Bill Nye, right? Okay, everyone, does anyone know Ken Ham though? Yeah. Okay, so Ken Ham, he runs the Creation Museum, right? The Noah's Ark experience in the States. And I don't know his credentials. Like he would call himself a scientist. I don't know what his credentials are, but so and many Christians are huge supporters of that ministry, and he's a huge supporter of creationism, and so they had a great video a year or two ago where Bill Nye walked through this museum, and kind of just like ripped apart like every single exhibit that was going on there, and it was fascinating. I don't know what Bill Nye's credentials are either, actually. If he's a legitimate, scientific personality, but he's certainly an entertaining personality. And so there seems to be this animosity, right, between, those that would say they're part of the scientific community and those that would say they're part of like the Christian scientific community or the, or a community of faith, and like this division, this kind of laughing at one another, this, apologists for each side. Like, I know you touched on that a little bit, but why is that the case, and how should we respond? How can we improve maybe the relationship? If you haven't seen that video, you got to go find it on the internet. It's great. How do we improve that relationship?
I think we improve it by just being able to sit down rationally and talk with people and not call them evil because they hold to a different view of how the world works in this. I mean, that's the same with talking to people from Muslim faith or Hindu faith. It's literally, I think, Christians have had a lot of times a real difficulty in not reacting emotionally to different ideas, right? And so we have to actually use our reason that God gave us. I would say another way we should react is by pointing out to strong Christian scientists, like someone like Francis Collins, who was the head of the Human Genome Project, right? It's like, this is a top level Christian mind. There's a lot of, and there's actually, that's the other thing I would say, there's a lot of Christians who kind of covertly don't talk about it a lot, but I was talking to someone who's an astrophysicist, has a part on the rover on Mars. He's a Christian and is looking for life on Mars. This is like a Christian guy. And the problem is that half the Christian people are like, you're not really Christian, right? Because he doesn't hold to a literal view of Genesis 1. So I think we need to be able to let those voices be there too. And I say again, point to the fact that they're like, for example, the Catholic Church they believe that somehow there is a version of evolution that can fit with the Christian faith. So we got to be able to say that. You don't have to believe that, but you have to be able to say, a Christian, this does not mean you're Christian or not a Christian. That's the first thing. That's one of the main things I'm trying to loosen up. And I have some really loved ones who might see this on the internet and be mad at me for saying that, because I think we all probably do, right? But I think that's the first step, is going, okay, we can all love Jesus and disagree on how we interpret Genesis 1.
Okay, we're gonna get into that. Anyone else have a question first? Yeah, we should wrap up in a second, but I gotta get into this before we do. So well, I think it's important that we just touch on current events just before we wrap up. So, because we haven't really talked about that at all. So right now, we've got this kind of division within the church, certainly within communities, in terms of scientific authority on matters of viruses like COVID-19, on matters of vaccination.
Right.
If you could just maybe wrap us up with that, how does this? Yeah, that's right. Is the camera on? It's taping, right?
Am I the right person to talk to?
Just help us to how do we think critically about that? What can be our response in this place where there's this tension between, the belief about scientific authority on those issues? How do we respond to that? And then we'll wrap.
I mean, the hard part is you have different theories all over the place. Was it Malone who created the mRNA vaccine? He's arguing he has worries about this vaccine right now. So you have scientists of high levels having issues. So it's hard to know who you listen to or not listen to. My main thing is, to be honest, as a pastor, and I'm going to say this now, I don't address this too much. I'm not telling you have to believe this way. What I would say is, be careful not to condemn someone who holds a different view than you on something. The church needs to be united, right? Whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated, or the unvaccinated are not evil that you have to shun for. They a lot of them are reasonable people who have their reasons for that. The people who are getting vaccinated aren't sheep who are being deceived and now they're microchipped and going. You know what I mean? We just have to tone down the rhetoric a lot in the church and go hey, this isn't not a salvation issue. Let's breathe and be in fellowship together. We should, and I think Bruxy did a really, really good job in the very first session talking about that. So I'd say go back and watch that too. That'd be really helpful.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, if you haven't seen that on our YouTube channel, Summer 6, you can go back and watch our week 1. We got rained out here, but we still put it up on YouTube. And Bruxy talks about some of that conspiracy theories and tension between Christians on those issues. So, Cyril, this was great. Thank you very much for filling in, jumping in. Yeah, we can give